And getting on the scene with me is Maureen. Hi, Maureen. How are you?
Hello, thank you for having me on.
Yes, and what made you decide to write to this book?
Well, people don't realize that Singapore is on the same equatorial belt as the Amazon rainforest, and we have a crazy amount of biodiversity. I mean, we have more species on our little island than the entire continent of North America. And we have many endemic animals that I found nowhere else except here. So a few years back, when I was a teacher in RI, I had to mentor my students to do project work. And a group of them wanted to do a project to save the tigers. I told them that's great, but there are no tigers in Singapore anymore. So why don't you raise awareness to save local animals? And they said, but there are no animals in Singapore. And that was the moment that I really wanted to write this story.
Right. Okay. So share with us the storyline.
In the Great Singapore Poo Sale and other beastly business, the animals of Singapore get together to save their homes, and then adventures ensue. I promised students that I would make an animal-related pun during this interview. So the book is about how we otter saved the earth.
Did you have a sort of like a tone or style in mind when writing it?
I've always loved reading, and my favorite author is Roald Dahl. So definitely he was a big inspiration. I think from writing a slice of life, you also know how important a sense of humor is to emotional well-being.
Absolutely.
So I try to have fun with writing, make the reader smile. Yep.
Yes, and I noticed it even within the title of the book, right? The Great Singapore Poo Sale and Other Beastly Business. There was always something a little bit wicked and slightly grotesque in the writings of Roald Dahl as well. Even though they were children's books, right? That's what makes it so naughty in a sense for children, and they love to read such things. So, what inspires you when you write, Maureen?
All kinds of things, but for this book in particular, of course, it was the animals. Right. I mentioned earlier on that we have so many endemic animals that are found nowhere else but in Singapore. For example, we have a really common sight in Singapore is this brownish squirrel with a white band and a black band on its side. That's called a plantain squirrel. And the ones that we find in Singapore are actually a unique subspecies. And we have three kinds of freshwater crabs, a lot of spiders that are found nowhere else. People are usually more drawn to big, charismatic animals, and they care less about these small creatures, but they are important too. But Singapore does have megafauna. I mean, people were really shocked when that big samba deer got hit along the BKE, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we still do have some megafauna, like the saltwater crocodile, which is the biggest reptile on the planet. And we have wild boar as well. They've been in the news a lot.
And I see you have that very famous also, the pink dolphin. We're quite familiar with as well. So it's a wonderful journey as well. It's kind of like an introduction to the native species of animals here in Singapore, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the illustrations as well are very enchanting. Tell us more about your illustrator, Gracie Chai.
She's actually a friend of mine from church.
And how did you collaborate together while working on this book, or did she do her own bit, separately?
There was definitely a collaboration. So many of the animals mentioned in the book were completely new to her. So I would send her reference images. The poses and all that are very much in her style and her design. So it was a great collaboration.
So you would say things like maybe alpha macaque's nose perhaps doesn't really look like that, or this character should be cuter, or things like that.
No. It's actually more to make it closer to the species' real anatomy, or make it closer to the species' real coloration. Yeah.
Yeah. Was there a character you particularly enjoyed writing?
Oh wow. Actually, the biggest challenge in writing the book was picking which animals to go in. I wanted to establish certain characters that the reader can go along with. But at the same time, I wanted to mention as many local animals as possible. But I could only fit in 35 animals this time, so a sequel is definitely in the works. And as to my favorite character, I think of all the animals in the book, my favorite animal out of 35 has to be the flying fox, which is the biggest bat in the world. And I could just watch them for hours. When you see them in the wild, like I saw them flying across a lake at dusk in Sri Lanka, the cadence of their flight is actually slower than a bird. They have this huge wingspan, and they're so graceful. And I happened to encounter some tame ones at a coffee plantation in Bali, and they were like dogs. Their name is flying fox because they have faces like a fox, and they love being scratched behind the ears, and they make that really shock face, when you're sketching them. So they were really adorable. I haven't seen them in a while in Singapore, but we do have them here.
All right, and the book, has quite a clear sort of ecological message. So, how do you hope young readers will feel after reading this book?
I think it's not just for young readers. I think my book is for adults as much as it is for children. I mean, it's somewhat satirical about our consumer society and how we have to put a dollar value on everything. If we want to put a dollar value on conservation, we can ask, okay, all these trees in the central catchment area that are converting carbon dioxide into breathable air, how much would it cost if we had to have machines to perform that same function, which most of us take for granted? Right? We could ask, how much money could the otters in Singapore bring in from ecotourism? They're quite famous now, and social media influencers from around the world are starting to come to Singapore just to see them. So there are lots of good commercial reasons why we should conserve the environment. But ultimately, I'm a Christian, and I believe that God gives us so many good gifts through nature. And it's not a coincidence that we are the dominant species, but we've actually been given a stewardship of these resources. So I hope what readers will take away is that we need to care for the environment.
All right.
And to quote Michael Jackson, we should heal the world for our children and our children's children.
Right. Thanks so much, Maureen, and all the best for your this book and then the next one, the sequel that's coming up, right?
Right. Thank you very much.
All right. Maureen Loh there, who is the author of The Great Singapore Poo Sale and Other Beastly Business. She also teaches English, literature, and life skills by introducing her young students to Roald Dahl's great principle, a little nonsense now and then is relished by the wisest men. And when not working, she seeks out adventures at home and abroad, especially wildlife encounters. Check out her new book, for both children and adults alike, The Great Singapore Poo Sale and Other Beastly Business, available from Epigram Books.